It's been a really long time. I honestly thought that I would come back to this channel and have something big to say. I mean, it's been 2 years and I've changed my username, but this one video on Yu Yu Hakusho is still getting views on a level that I just never anticipated. And I wanted to come back here with an upbeat voice, maybe try to get a bit better at editing and actually use background music. But so much has changed since May of 2018 when I first dabbled in making content for YouTube. Summer 2018 was a weird one for sure, because I was in this transition phase. I was going to a school out of state, and I was applying to a ton of nursing schools. I didn't know it, but I was about to get a second rejection letter from my then college's nursing program, which meant that I couldn't go there. I was going to move into my first apartment with 2 of my closest friends, and the classes in my schedule for fall 2018 were almost entirely filled with classes I was excited about. I was genuinely happy, and I was producing 8,000-word short stories for my closest friend to read just for a love of writing. I made the Kurama video essay in 4 days, and really, it only took that long because I hate editing. In January 2019, I moved into a small 1-bedroom in a big city and was essentially isolated. I did this so I could attend a nursing school that accepted me, and even though I had no idea how hard it was going to be, I persisted. While I was knee-deep in foundations of nursing and crying myself to sleep about pharmacology during the fall 2019 semester, somebody put my Kurama video on Reddit. I never cared about views or attention, but all of a sudden there were people engaging. There were comments and likes, and I was absolutely astonished. When people asked me if I'd make another video, I was filled with this crazy amount of glee. People want me to make content? Okay, I figured. I was gonna talk about Kazuma Kuwabara. He's the heart of the show and a character that makes me think of so many important people in my life. I set a goal of making it during December of 2019, and I focused on my finals. As if life wanted to throw a curveball, 2 days after my finals, the left side of my neck swelled up and it looked like I had inserted a golf ball under my skin. The emergency room couldn't give me answers, and when we finally managed to go see my ENT, he ignored the lump in my neck and informed me that there was essentially a second golf ball behind my aortic arch. Needless to say, I was good and distracted for all of December that year, trying to figure out what needed surgery and making sure that I just didn't have cancer. I now have a hideous scar on the left side of my neck, courtesy of May 2020, and so far, the lump behind my heart is on a wait-and-see basis, with the odds of it being cancer incredibly minimal. But needless to say that the video wasn't going to happen then. My new goal was May of 2020, and I think you all know how it turned out given what 2020 was like for each and every one of you. I'm so disillusioned, and honestly, 2020 began to rot in my brain. I was living in this tiny space for half a year with nobody to talk to, and nursing books practically screaming at me for my sole focus. I started having really awful dark thoughts, and I'm still working through the impacts of them with a therapist. It's not a good time to go into medicine, and yet my sole fear in this world is losing the compassion and empathy that I used to identify myself. I fear 2020 taking things from me that I just can't get back. Things integral to me choosing to study medicine to begin with. In September of 2020, I watched Yu Yu Hakusho for the 6th time all the way through. One of my friends had planned to meet up with me in the city I go to school in back in August for my birthday, but my city was still in lockdown and we decided to be safe instead of sorry. We had talked about media to consume, and he knew how important Yu Yu Hakusho was to me. After teasing the idea for a while, we decided to watch it together, and for me, this meant getting back to reconnecting with the 4 boys I love so much. Meant reconnecting with Yusuke's strength, Hiei's determination, Kurama's wit, and Kuwabara's heart. In 2020, in the past 2 years, Kuwabara has been the person that I've needed more than anything because he's the heart of the show. He's the person pumping blood to these other 3 and reminding them of what's worth fighting for. Frankly, I think Kuwabara is the strongest character in the show because emotionally, he's the most settled. He's the most secure, and I admire that. I need to see that to remind myself that everything is okay. So today, I want to talk about Kazuma Kuwabara. I want to talk about the heart of the show and highlight how he really is the hero that we all need when we're struggling with the dark periods of our own lives. So today, I want to talk about Kazuma Kuwabara. I want to talk about the heart of the show and highlight how he really is the hero that we all need when we're struggling with dark periods in our own lives. Kuwabara is originally introduced to the show by being beaten up by the one and only Yusuke Urameshi. He's loud, oafish, and almost immediately and unceremoniously beaten up by our hero. We barely get to form much of an opinion on him before his face is little more than mush at Yusuke's mercy. We're presented with this concept that this is an everyday occurrence, where Kuwabara shows up almost daily in order to throw down with Yusuke and maybe clinch a win one of these days. He hasn't yet, but that doesn't mean he'll never win, right? Although, even though Kazuma always loses and Yusuke always wins, Yusuke is also always seen alone and Kuwabara always seen with his friends. Yes, Yusuke has Keiko and also sort of Kuwabara, but for the most part, he's alone. Kazuma isn't. He's secure in himself, at least enough to know who his friends are and aren't, and this is a luxury that really none of the other main characters have in the beginning. If Yusuke paid more attention though, perhaps he would have realized that their daily sparring matches and rematches meant something. Because Kuwabara makes his mark only 17.5 minutes into the runtime when he shows up at Urameshi's wake. Change is incredibly difficult, and for Kuwabara, it's overwhelming. This isn't the last time he'll have to grapple with a sudden death, but this is enough to startle our protagonist, because while 2 of his 3 friends are trying to pull him away, Kuwabara drags himself to Yusuke's wake, shouting at his picture as if expecting an answer.
I'm gonna beat you down, you punk! You hear me? Who do you think you are, huh? Dirty punk! Who am I gonna fight now? Who am I gonna fight?
He's gone!
No! You're supposed to be here for me.
I think the key question here that he poses is, who am I supposed to fight now? Because it's so neatly wrapped up. For Yusuke, Kazuma was just a person to beat up for the umpteenth time, but for Kuwabara, it was a genuine expression of companionship and camaraderie. Sparring with Yusuke wasn't for some grand prize, but to bond together over something Yusuke understood. It was meeting this street punk on a level that he was comfortable with and could participate in without hesitation. It was finding a way to be friends with Yusuke in a way that made Yusuke comfortable, and the fact that he could just die like that, could just vanish without a trace, without so much as a goodbye or an acknowledgement that they were truly friends, is so devastating that Kuwabara has to be physically dragged out of the wake with tears in his eyes. He wanted to be Yusuke's friend, and now that he's dead, there's nothing he can do to fully reach that threshold. In the next episode, we're introduced to this concept of spirit awareness, specifically that Kuwabara possesses a high degree of it, and that Yusuke's ghost can both be felt by and is capable of possessing him. This is immediately utilized to help Yusuke tell Keiko that he was coming back to life, and of course, when coming to, Kazuma finds himself holding Keiko close. One slap is all he needs to get away, which I personally think was a bit undeserved, but Kazuma mumbles "That's fine, I probably deserved it," before Keiko disappears. The next episode is a sudden but deserved home run for our pompadour-wielding hero, and honestly, it's an episode that hit me harder now that I'm essentially married to nursing school for one more year of my life. As mentioned before, when Yusuke tends to be alone when in the city or at school, Kuwabara is almost always with his 3 closest friends, Kamada, Kirishima, and Okubo. These 3 are devout members of his little street thug crew, and frankly, they would do about anything for each other. This is put to the test when resident sentient rat Mr. Akashi decides that one dead student isn't interesting enough for him, so he's going to mess with the Kuwabara gang. More specifically, he's found out that Okubo has a part-time job that he's not really allowed to have as a middle school student. If he tells the principal, there's a good chance Okubo will be punished and forced to lose his job as a result. But of course, that's if. Instead of automatic punishment, he poses a choice to the gang. Either stop fighting for a whole week, or Okubo will be in jeopardy of losing his job. Kuwabara doesn't take the time to ask Okubo questions about the importance of his job or further negotiate. He just immediately accepts. It's important to Okubo, and therefore it's important to him too. His friends attempt to beg for a shorter time, but Akashi won't have it, and Kuwabara is adamant he won't fight for a week. Will these thugs come back for round 2? Probably, but it doesn't matter. This is important to Okubo, and therefore it's important to Kazuma as well. Of course, those thugs do show back up, and when running away doesn't get them off his tail, Kuwabara submits and allows the 3 of them to beat the hell out of him. Like, even Ghost Yusuke and Botan look a little troubled by this, and yet no matter how hard they hit, Kuwabara doesn't lay a finger on them. In fact, in the midst of it, he asks them,
I got one favor to ask you numbskulls. Take out all your anger on me and leave my buddies out of this.
You would think that this is where things end, right? Kuwabara takes a beating without resorting to hitting back, and now Kubo can keep his job, right? Except, well, Mr. Akashi's an asshat and really just wants to get rid of Kuwabara now that Yusuke is little more than a pavement smear to make a kid with a ball feel bad. So there's another stipulation for Akubo's employment now. This time it's getting above a 50% on their upcoming science exam, and that would be fine, except that while Kuwabara's gang all got scores that they could easily bring up to 50s with some studying, our main man snagged himself a 7. But it's fine, everything is gonna be fine. While other members of the team would respond with further conditions negatively, with Hiei immediately going into how do I kill you fastest mode, Yusuke launching into a screaming explosion of anger, and Kurama silently plotting the most painful way to kill you imaginable, Kuwabara just accepts this. He starts studying, spending money on proper studying material, and when other street punks realize he's just taking beatings without hitting back, they take him up on that offer and destroy those study materials in the process. Kuwabara takes it and consistently reassures his friends that it's okay. He's not going to fight and he's going to study hard. He made this commitment and nothing will shake him. I guess looking back at it, this episode hits me in the gut so hard because the last 2 years of my life have been so consumed with studying. With being better than I previously imagined I could be, not because I want to be better, but because I have this expectation that comes with my career. I'm not being punched or flung across a sidewalk, but there is a part of me that always asks if I'm good enough. If I'm gonna be okay, even though I never imagined myself crossing the hurdles I suddenly have to jump with no warning. Kuwabara didn't ask, he just acts. Okubo couldn't lose his job, so Kuwabara made his suffering his own with a smile on his face. Hell, our pompadour-wielding hero is studying so hard that even Ghost Yusuke decides to cheer him on, appearing in his dreams and helping quiz him so that even sleep is productive. Anybody know where I can get one of those? The studying even pays off, because not only does Kuwabara take his time during the exam, but he rechecks his answers right after and comes out of the room excited to tell them that he scored 53 points, enough to get himself over the threshold and secure Okubo his job. I want to stop for a second and highlight just one thing here, and it's the mention of this being nothing but a promise between men. Because although this may seem like your typical bro code Barney Stinson crap, I don't think that's the case. Every main character here has their own motto to live by, and Kuwabara's is one of chivalry, sometimes to a toxic degree, unending loyalty to friends and respect for fighting. This isn't to say that this disqualifies his defining this act as a promise between men, but I do think it highlights a major building block of who Kuwabara is and wants to grow into. Loyalty and honesty is key here. So when Akashi approaches him bragging that he actually failed to get over 50 points and insinuates that one of his answers that was most definitely there just isn't anymore, this very code amongst men is challenged. Kuwabara held up his end of the bargain, no questions asked, but Akashi just snapped his motto in half without a second thought. He moves to punch the rat-faced man but stops short. And although Botan tells Yusuke that his spirit energy was communicating emotions to him to help him stop, I don't think giving Yusuke any credit here is fair. Look at this kid. Look at the anger and hurt circling through Kuwabara as he legitimately considers what it means to break the nose of somebody who deserves it. He wants to do this, wants to end him, but he can't bring himself to. Not because Akashi is innocent or hitting him would be completely wrong, but because he recognizes that he needed to be the bigger man. He put so much work into coming this far. He studied, he didn't fight, he did what he could to protect Okubo, and he's not going to let somebody so petty steal this from him. Yusuke might want credit, but he would have punched Akashi even if he refuses to admit it here. Kuwabara just put too much work in to let this man drag him back down to his level. Of course, things turn out fine because Mr. Takanaka realizes Akashi and Iwamoto were conspiring against Kazuma and his grade is changed back. Okubo gets to keep his job, and then we go right back to focusing on our little green dawning hellchild. Kuwabara helping Keiko free Yusuke's body from the burning apartment is pretty consistent with how he is, and although people really latched on to my quips about being weak for Kurahi, I can't say the same about Kuwameshi, and am personally glad that he didn't kiss dead Yusuke to revive him. I of course love Eikichi, but really, Kuwa refusing to fight the guy holding the kitten hostage is just a reinforcement of his behavior in the testing episode. Stakes matter. He's not going to let you drag him down onto your level. A mulberry is a tree, Kuwabara is a man, and his definition of manhood keeps him in a secure and confident place. Whenever I watch the Rando arc with friends, I don't really shy away from the fact that it's really not my thing, mostly because, Kuwabara has an experience that just really flips my stomach. We don't have to go over this, do we? I mean, there's not much information here. After all,
Please, no more!
Okay, well, now that that's in my brain again, let's talk about the Genkai tournament. Honestly, the most endearing thing about this whole scenario is that Kuwabara isn't here to try to become the strongest man at Seriashiki Junior High or develop cool psychic powers. He's literally just here because Ghost Yusuke made his spirit awareness overwhelming and he just wants it to stop. He doesn't know much about what this awareness means or that he could channel it into legitimate power. He's just a confused kid who figured out this old psychic hermit might have a spirit silencer. The moment this kid realizes that it's going to be more trouble than it's worth, with all the powerful psychics and martial artists turning up for their shot, he wants to get the hell out of Dodge and is anything but excited when he draws a winning lot and is propelled forward to have a shot at being Genkai's sole student. What Kuwabara doesn't know, though, is that he only got this far because the lot sensed his spirit energy and reacted to it. Double down on this concept of untapped potential almost immediately, because those with adequate spirit energy are further tested by Grandma's Dungeon Arcade. These tests boiled down to the power of your spirit energy, its adaptability, and how high your awareness is. While Yusuke schools him, Kuwa's power is nothing to scoff at, and his awareness is enough to have Genkai herself gawking over it, expressing her surprise that he isn't wielding a spirit weapon already. We don't get to see Yusuke or Kuwabara's adaptability, or at least it's not spoken by Genkai or viewed in terms of them singing karaoke, which in my opinion is a huge shame, but I have no doubt that Kuwabara's adaptability would be incredibly high. As we see throughout the series, as we'll get more into the fight-centered part of the show, Kuwabara doesn't think outside of the box. For him, there is no box at all. If he can think it, he can do it. The first true test is just navigating through a big maze of forest, and Kuwabara has spirit awareness powers, remember, so he's fine. He gets there first and he's ready to move on to the next thing. The next thing is the actual tournament portion of the Genkai tournament, and after watching some other guy get killed, the first victim of Kuwabara's blue-haired girl fetish, Botan, has the pleasure of meeting him properly. He's immediately enamored with her, and she's less than interested, but he's also at least introduced to the case and made aware of the real reason they have to be here. There's a demon who slaughtered countless psychics for their abilities and they have to stop him. Brilliant. When it's Kuwabara's turn to fight, Botan seems concerned that he's outmatched, but after taking a moment to brag about being the stronger fighter, Yusuke admits that Kuwabara has boundless determination and that this makes him a strong fighter. Not a guaranteed win, but this does give him an edge. And an edge he seems to have, because even though he quickly loses the ability to track his opponent with his spirit awareness, he seems to be almost shrugging off the punches of the man who is objectively stronger than him. Yusuke hits harder and Kuwabara is used to being punched by Yusuke, ergo he's fine. This causes Musashi to bring out a wooden sword that conducts spirit energy, and although it packs a much harder punch than his, well, punches, the tip also snaps off during the merciless beating and becomes free for grabs as a result. Well, it channels Musashi's spirit energy, so why not give it a test drive? Kuwabara takes said tip and to his own astonishment performs an act of materialization. In a moment of pure desperation, his body turns his high spirit awareness into action, channeling his energy through the conduit he's holding and creating his signature spirit sword. Both Musashi and Kuwabara are mortified, but it only takes the lesson of energy sword stronger than wooden sword for Musashi to be beaten and Kuwa to earn a place in the semifinals. He's confused and unsure of himself, but this further illustrates that even though he's not quite Yusuke's level of god tier, He more than deserves a spot on this team. The next 2 fights belong to Yusuke, and while I enjoy his signature brand of luck and dumbassery, it's not about him right now. At the end of the day, all this does is whittle us down to 3 competitors, and since we know Yusuke and Kuwabara aren't rando, that only leaves Shorin. And since Kuwabara lives by his personal code, it's a wonder why Yusuke even attempts to argue him out of fighting Shorin. This concept of manliness that consumes Kuwa includes this muscle-clad action hero, and a hero doesn't exactly run away. Demon, monster, fire-breathing dragon, whatever. Kuwabara is determined to fight him and then have his millionth rematch with Yusuke. But, of course, it doesn't really go in that direction. After getting in a few hits, Shorin decides that this isn't interesting enough and shrinks Kuwabara down to the size of a Ken doll. From there, well... okay. Yeah, that happens. Obviously, with his arms and legs completely shattered and a few ribs playing who can pierce a vital organ first, he's not going to be winning any fight against the still disguised rando. Yusuke has to take his place and somehow win against the psychic serial killer. This isn't going so well though, and after revealing his somehow even funnier looking true form, Rando manages to get the upper hand and tosses Yusuke into a pond to either drown or be eaten by demonic fish. So naturally, it's time for Kuwabara's adaptable energy to transmit his consciousness into Yusuke's for a pep talk. Keeping to the way their friendship works, Kuwabara isn't here to shower Yusuke in compliments or niceties, but instead to hurl insults at him. He's weak, he's being stupid, and if he's really going to die this way, then he wasn't any good to begin with. One touch I like here is that Kuwabara says that Yusuke is weak because he can't see his own energy, which leads me to believe that Kuwabara has a better grasp on the malleability and potential of his spirit energy, even this early into the series, while Yusuke just understands that the laser in his finger can make the bad guy stop breathing. This pep talk essentially boils down to, stop being a friggin' pussy, Urameshi, which is all Yusuke needs to cease drowning and finish Rando off with patent pending Urameshi luck, honestly. Oh god, the Yusuke essay would just be about being exhausted, angry, and lucky, wouldn't it? Maze Castle is, well, let's just say I liked skipping it in the Kurama essay. It's easily my least favorite part of the show, but we can't ignore Kuwabara's contributions to it. He's thrilled just to go on a mission, and while he almost immediately makes Kurama's friendship counter hit 3 out of 3, he also begins an immediate dick measuring contest with future brother-in-law Hiei. That honestly still makes me laugh. I love their dynamic. After Hiei is being teased with the prospect of having more than one friend, and Kurama, wins against the Rock, but doesn't really win efficiently enough, Kuwabara realizes that between his newly revived rival and these 2 Demon World refugees, he's the weakest link in the chain by default, and everybody knows it. If he wants to cement himself, he's going to need to fight the next guy come hell or high water. Hell in this case is a very specific type of furry's wet dream, Byakko the White Tiger. Byakko, understandably, isn't going to take Kazuma very seriously and takes this opportunity to do little more than fuck with him, first showing parts of the path to him to see how our pompadoured hero responds, and then creating mindless creatures out of his own mane to deal with him. These things might not have any free will or ambitions, but they pack a punch and were given the intent to kill. I don't know if you guys know this, but a sword only has 1 tip and is a singular object, so beating 4 giant monsters with only his spirit sword really isn't much of an option. Yusuke, going into mommy mode, tells Kazuma that he doesn't give a shit if he wants help or not, he's coming to help him, only for Kuwabara to threaten to kill him right then and there if he so much as tries. Kuwabara's code doesn't allow for cowardly behavior, and for him in that moment, allowing any other member of the team to interfere would be cowardly. A mulberry is a tree, Kuwabara is a man. Kurama fought all on his own, and so will Kazuma. Remember how I said Kuwabara's spirit adaptability was incredibly high? Yeah, let's inject a dose of that signature Kuwabara creativity into things. Because when faced with these 4 monsters, he lures them onto a narrow bridge where they have to stand single file, only to turn his spirit sword into a skewer. When this doesn't have the immediate positive outcome he was anticipating, he leads the 4 creatures around a turret and traps them, since now, his sword is no longer a skewer but instead a circular chain linking them human centipede style. Side note, no matter how rough things have been getting in the past few months, this scene never fails to get me to laugh. From Hiei's sarcastic, "Do you think he knows it's a circle?" to the fact that this move is named the Monster Beast Donut and Kurama takes the time to call it a perfect name, All of it just gets me to release ungodly giggles. Kuwabara's creativity is honestly one of my favorite things about him, because instead of agonizing about a twist in the situation, he adapts quicker than the other three and works with what he has. Byakuya starts absorbing his spirit energy and essentially filling himself with it. Okay, feigns surprise, shock, and horror, while feeding him enough spirit energy to cause him to literally rupture from the inside out. The other three would have floundered a bit, but Kuwabara adapts and tries to figure out how best to deal with the shift in their fight. Of course, Byakuya isn't just going to die from a stomach rupture. No, why would that be enough? So instead, he and Kuwabara decide to play a game of the floor is lava on steroids, which only ends when Kazuma decides to turn his sword into a pole vault, get one good punch in, and send the both of them tumbling towards a lovely swim in molten rock. If we learn anything about these boys, it's that unless your name is Hiei, you're going to attempt to die for your friends at least once, and Yusuke immediately believes this to be the case, which gives us this lovely gem.
It's all so stupid! I mean, we're protecting the world, so who's protecting us?
The thought of losing the heart of his group, his effective second in command and best friend, is just too painful to bear. Anytime we really need to get to Yusuke, we threaten his favorite child, Kazuma, to get results, because this will pull away Yusuke's walls and security. Just like Kuwabara couldn't cope with the idea of Yusuke being dead and immediately fell apart at his wake, Yusuke can't cope with the idea of losing Kuwabara and immediately falls apart. They're partners in crime, and although they don't have the words for it, they're brothers, and they love each other. If you want more evidence of this love between them, look no further than 4 episodes later, when after getting his butt kicked by the least memorable boss, Suzaku, Yusuke elects to use life energy to finish him off and nearly dies in the process. Kuwabara has been unable to fight beside him up until this point, since he and the demons are fighting what I assume the zombies from that old iPhone game were like, so by the time they reach him, Yusuke is on death's door, while Hiei and Kurama are being all,
"Stop, don't come back."
Kuwabara refuses to accept the reality that Yusuke might die and gives him some of his life energy as a result. Not only does he give Yusuke some of his own life to keep him at his side, but he houses and gives up his bed to the sleeping Yusuke for the next 3 days. We have to appreciate the love between two best friends, and although they're eternally in the 90s mentality where two platonic male friends can't tell each other how much they love each other, it's clear Yusuke is incredibly important to him and he will do anything to help him. Cut to the next case, and we're introduced to the other most important person to Kuwabara, Yukina. Now that he's familiar with the whole spirit detective thing, Kuwabara is allowed to tag along for the next case, and when witnessing the debriefing VHS made by Koenma, he's immediately smitten by the captive ice apparition named Yukina. He was actually not going to attend this case, but he declares that not only is he in love with Yukina, but he is tethered to her by a red string of fate. Suddenly, he's physically stronger, more confident, and entirely focused. Sure, he's never met this woman, never touched her or heard her voice, but this is love, and Yukina is just waiting for him. I don't want to talk about Miyuki. Not because I don't care for her as a character or anything, just that it's 2021 now, and seeing the way they talk about her and how she talks about herself after it's discovered that she's trans makes me feel pretty icky. I'm not comfortable with Yusuke touching her penis, or the way that he refers to her, or really any of it, because it just feels so unnecessarily cruel to transgender women. I only want to mention her because it does tap into a piece of Kuwabara's code that could actually be harmful, and that's his immediate infantilization and underestimation of women as fellow fighters. I'm not saying that Kazuma is a misogynist or anything. He's 14 and just has some dumb ideas about women, that's all. I'm more on the Yusuke side of things here.
I'll fight with you.
You're Messi? Are you serious?
She's a fighter and she's trying to get in our way. I don't care if she's a girl or a baby or somebody's grandmother. I'll still knock her out.
Anybody could be deadly given the right circumstances, and Kuwabara acting like one's gender affects how dangerous they are or aren't is one part of his chosen code that really isn't going to do him any favors. But enough about icky stuff and more about big dick energy, because the mere presence of Yukina being a game changer is going to become a very common theme. Because when faced with the Toguro brothers for the very first time, Kuwabara doesn't back down, but instead is more than willing to fight. He's heard of the suffering she's needed to endure, and thusly, he's going to do anything to help her get out of it. Although it hardly counts, watching Kuwabara propelled forward with the spirit gun blast and impale younger Toguro onto his sword is still really freaking cool. He doesn't actually beat Toguro, and nobody on Team Urameshi actually kills Yukina's captor Terukane, but Yukina still recognizes him as her savior, and although she's not as openly in love or on board with the whole we're connected through divine fate thing as Kazuma is, their bond is cemented here, and although they're not often together, when they are, it's clear just how much they begin to mean to one another. So Yukina returns to Demon World after spending some time with him, and life is back to its mundane, average self, right? Well, kinda, sorta. Except that Yusuke is suddenly met with a younger Toguro, more than willing to flex his powers. And this flex comes with scaring the shit out of a 14-year-old boy and convincing him to enter a tournament full of demons just chomping at the bit to fight and kill anything, but especially humans. The stipulation is that Kurama, Hiei, and Kuwabara must attend as well, and while Kuwabara only gets to feel a bit of Toguro's energy, it's enough to absolutely terrify him and convince our pompadoured hero that being trained by Hiei and Kurama for the next 2 months is good idea. Can't imagine Hiei was very kind about it either, so damn, he really must have been scared. I like Rinku, but Team Rokuyukai really isn't huge on the whole character development train for the team. Like, even Yusuke's fight with Chu is more about setting up the status quo for our boy. Rinku is just as playful and cocky as Kuwabara, so the fight is just the two of them taking turns surprising one another in terms of power and creativity, with Rinku just edging out our hero. And get used to that, I guess, because Kuwabara doesn't really have the greatest win count during the Dark Tournament, but this doesn't really get him down too much. The team still edges out a win, and there are more important things to focus on, like how the fighter in the mask wearing Genkai's clothes, with powers like Genkai and the same height as Genkai, couldn't possibly be Genkai, because the voice is different. Gee, what a mystery. Just like in the Spirit Detective arc, Kuwabara decides to peek very early again during the Dr. Ichigaki fights. Ichigaki is a teeny Danny DeVito looking creature who doesn't fight himself, instead leaving it up to his 3 soulless fighters who are literally numbered and referred to as such. While his 2 lizard henchmen distract Kurama and Hiei, Yusuke, masked fighter, and Kuwabara are left to fight M1, M2, and M3. Prior to even fighting them, Kuwa is struck with a nightmare about the trio of fighters, waking up with the prevailing thought that they shouldn't even be here, and is visibly distressed by how he's feeling. When faced with them, his incredibly strong empathy and spirit awareness allows the trio of Ichigaki experiments to send him their feelings on the matter. Yusuke and the masked fighter are completely oblivious to the very palpable misery coming off of the M trio, but Kuwabara is seeing, hearing, and feeling their misery before even fighting, and he's so impacted by it that he's in physical distress. These 3 gave up their bodies and free will to keep their master from dying, and what I think strikes me so hard about this is that Kuwabara would do this for his friends. Okay, maybe not for Hiei, but if giving up his body for a year meant keeping Yusuke alive, he would do it in a heartbeat. He shares the empathy that put the M's in this situation, and this empathy allows them to communicate specifically with him. Even though the Ichigaki team are incredibly strong and the 3 participants are getting their asses handed to them, Kuwabara continues to plead with the 3 as they attack him. He wants to believe that they're going to snap out of it with enough reminders of who they're meant to be, and despite the fact that this doesn't seem to help, Kuwabara continues to beg them to return to normal as they attack him. After continuing to show no results, Yusuke is ready to shout at the M's and finish them off, and Ichigaki is convincing them that they're essentially zombies, but Kuwabara will not let go of the empathy he has for them. It doesn't matter what Yusuke or Ichigaki say. It doesn't matter that they've been dodging this whole time. As the M's approach another time, Kuwabara plants himself in the middle of the ring as they prepare to make their assault. As the trio beat him up, Kuwabara begs them to give him an idea of how to help them. He understands that they're in pain, and he's taking hit after hit, holding on to them and looking into empty eyes to try to help them find a way out. He's reminding them of their master, and even when they've charged their most powerful attacks, he takes all 3 at once while trying to hold them off, never once giving up on the humanity trapped within the M's. Hell, George refers to Kuwabara as too kind-hearted for this tournament after he's taken out by the M's, but when Yusuke is screaming at them for hurting the man they chose to help them, he finally gets it. The compassion that only Kuwabara offered them breaks through, and not only do the M's begin to visibly weep due to the suffering that they've had to endure, but their attacks seem to get weaker, and Yusuke is actually able to make sense of them and react accordingly. The M's are suffering and they just wanted to die, and the only person empathetic enough to understand and listen to them was Kuwabara, awakening their true selves through his empathy and ultimately allowing Mystery Lady to use a special technique that would either kill or save them depending on if they were pure enough to heal. With the compassion given to them by Kuwa, they're able to revive, and after being reunited with their master, are able to live happily ever after. Imagine for a moment, if you will, what would have happened if Kurama and Hiei had been fighting the M's instead. Do you really think they wouldn't have just killed them without a second thought? Kurama is empathetic, yes, but he's also logical and prone to getting too into his head. I don't think the M's would have spoken to him as they did Kuwabara. So without the compassion of our beloved blue thug, Kai, Ryu, and En would have died at the hands of some demon during this tournament, trapped in their own bodies and unable to do anything about it. So Team Urameshi wins the round and is immediately slated to fight against Team Masho. Something fanservice McBigTits steals Hiei and Mask Lady, and Kurama's really the only fighter not at least a little beaten up right now. Yusuke has taken some damage and Kuwabara isn't even capable of standing up after taking the brunt of the M's attacks, so really things aren't looking too hot. While I had a lot to say about Kurama's contributions, and I can't pretend that I'm not smiling ear to ear the whole time Jin is on screen, Kuwabara's fight with Risho is really only memorable as a flex of big dick energy. Kuwabara can barely stand up, let alone summon a powerful spirit sword, and as a result, he isn't much of a match for Risho's stone armor and his comet-esque techniques. Hell, he's losing so bad that he's willing to give his own life up just to secure a draw so that the team can win by default. He takes time to apologize to each member of the team, enrages Yusuke in the process, and then he moves to have a manly death at the hands of Risho. Except that when he first thinks hearing Yukina's voice is his life flashing before his eyes, he soon comes to the sudden realization that Yukina is now in the tournament arena and calling out to him. He's so thrilled he nearly throws the entire fight by talking to her out of the ring, and when he does get back to the fight proper, he doesn't even bat an eye at the new armor Risho is donning, using his sword like a baseball bat and turning the leader of the shinobi into a home run scoring ball for daring to be rude and interrupt his time with his true love. Yukina didn't heal him or anything, just seeing her was enough to fill him with unadulterated joy to get him to push through the miserable state his body is in, and he only collapses again once he's been declared the winner, and he's sure Yukina knows just how much of a badass he is. From there, how about we skip the Uratogi fights? I don't think being teleported to another spot and technically losing 2 fights really count as character development. Yusuke and Genkai. Oh, wait, sorry. Genkai is the masked fighter! Go on a field trip to a really sweet cave to bleed in and externally, and although Kuwabara helps Hiei learn about rock, paper, scissors, his fights really aren't even fights. So let's just take a hop, skip, and jump to the finals. Before facing Team Toguro, the namesake of the team decides he can't have living baggage like exes hanging around and promptly kills Genkai. While Yusuke witnessed it and Botan, Shizuru, Hiei, and Kurama are aware that this has happened without Yusuke explicitly telling them this, Kuwabara is left in the dark, being fed lies to stop him from asking more about where she really was. Despite the gift of the trial sword from Shichiwakamaru and the boost to his power that this gives Kuwabara, Elder Toguro is no easy opponent, and slashing him in half really isn't going to do anything at all. Not only is Elder Toguro nigh impossible to actually kill, but he quickly gets his hands on the trial sword and is quick to drop the little fun fact that Genkai is dead and everybody knows, but Yukina, and Keiko, and of course they don't know. He's overcome with grief and rage because it's been 2 literal days and nobody even thought to let him in on this. Kuwabara may be the compassionate member, your ride or die friend who only sees the good in you, but in his head, nobody really takes him seriously. Nobody is compassionate to him if they were willing to keep this secret from him. Not only is he overwhelmed, but he is able to channel his energy first into a sword and then into a burst of spherical energy reminiscent of Genkai's spirit wave technique. Hey, we said he had the power of materialization. Nobody said that it had to be a sword. He chops the Elder Toguro into pieces just like Master Genkai would have, and if the cheeky bastard wasn't nigh immortal, this would have been a really cool way for him to go out. But the fucker puts himself back together and the fight continues. The interesting thing about this matchup, and why I think it makes sense for Kuwa to be put against Elder Toguro, is that they both really have limitless potential in terms of their power. Toguro uses the fingers on his right hand to bind Kuwabara up and make him immobile, while turning his left fingers into a blade. But Kuwabara uses his own energy as an extension of his arm to grab the trial sword, then using it as an essential boomerang to return to him and cut the brother into pieces in the process. His body coming back together? Okay, let's find a way to attack all of his body at once to kill him once and for all. See, this is what I love about Kuwabara. Nobody else on the team would be confident and self-assured enough to turn their weapon into a household item, but the appearance of the spirit fly swatter is not only endlessly entertaining, but it pounds Toguro into a pace that he'll need a little while to recover from and hands Kuwabara the win. But it wasn't about the elder brother, was it? What got him upset in the first place was the truth, was the realization that a member of their team died and nobody thought to give him this news and allow him to cope. Without a second thought, a congratulatory Yusuke is met with a fist right into his cheek and sent into the ground. He's angry and upset, and although Yusuke allows this mourning, Kurama tries to meet him on his level, tries to get him to understand that Yusuke intentionally kept everybody in the dark. Only after Kurama allows them to take this moment does Yusuke copy this behavior and meet Kuwabara in the middle, appealing to his natural compassion by allowing him to see how distraught he's been about this. How making this a secret was less about trusting his friends and more about being unable to cope with his own grief. With this appeal in hand and giving Kazuma a take it or leave it attitude, Kuwabara only smiles faintly and tells him to win this, an act of meeting Yusuke where he wants to be met. One may be open with his misery and the other closed off, but they understand enough about how to appeal to the other that they know that they will always have each other's backs. This is probably why when younger Toguro, after some encouragement from Poo Genkai, decides to kill a member of Team Urameshi, he immediately settles on Kuwabara as his victim. He doesn't really entertain this idea of Hiei and Kurama, because even as a passive viewer, he understands that Kuwabara is the person that Yusuke is the closest to. Hell, during my viewings, I'm often seen calling Yusuke mommy and the other three his children because he's damn near mothering with them at times. But regardless of what's going on, Kuwabara has always been and will always be his favorite child. And this is why Toguro must kill him to make Yusuke stronger. Despite Yusuke struggling and failing to try to stop him, and Hiei and Kurama discussing what to do in the event that they must face him to protect Kuwabara, our Pompadour sporting hero makes the three watching alongside him stand back and ignoring their pleas accepts his fate. Toguro wants to face him and, as his honor code says, he's going to fight those who challenge him. Does that mean dying? Yes. But he is no coward.
A mulberry is a tree, Kuwabara is a man, and I'll prove it. We all have to die when our time comes, but if we do our duty, we don't got regrets. So taste a little piece of my sword, Toguro.
Ignoring Yusuke's pleas, Kuwabara races to face Toguro, this titan of a being who is seemingly unkillable. Toguro reaches him first, and that's it. His fingers cut into him like butter, and with his final breaths, he tells Yusuke he's done what he can and to win for all of them. Kurama catches him and begs for him to hold on, but he's gone. It's up to Yusuke now. Of course, this isn't actually the case. Death is an illusion in Yu Yu Hakusho, and after Yusuke turns around and manages to kill Toguro, his tears of anguish turn into tears of rage at the realization that Kuwabara is anything but dead. Sure, he gets a somewhat deserved beating for lying to their leader, but it's unlikely Yusuke could have turned around and pulled out a win without thinking he could, and partially just did, lose everything that mattered to him. Luckily, the team is able to escape, use their tournament victory wish to bring Genkai back, since Koenma can just do that, and everything is okay, right? Right? Well, sort of. Kuwabara doesn't have a spirit awareness all of a sudden, since the tournament seems to have robbed him of that. But other than his sudden awakening, things seem mundane as they return to school. Of course, things get weird when three psychics kidnap Yusuke, but honestly, that's more interesting for the other three than it is for Kuwabara. He's really just here to rally the troops and then follow in Mami Urameshi's footsteps by getting kidnapped, so he's fine. It's fine. Kuwabara joins Kurama's tunnel search party, and he's at least aware of the doctor fight, even though he doesn't participate in it. So things don't really shake up for Kuwabara in the Chapter Black saga until he meets a very special man. A sea man, if you will. Team Urameshi, sans Hiei, who skipped town after being told he's not the best demon, but a normal B class, is trying to figure out who the enemy is and what they need to do. Kuwabara can't join him for now though. Why? Because the totally not pop band Megallica Saga is in town, and he has tickets with the recently neglected Kuwabara gang. Yusuke might be pissed and threaten him, but Kazuma doesn't care. If the world is ending tonight, he would still choose to go to this concert. Therefore, suck it, Yusuke, it's concert time. Remember when we could go to concerts and see people? God, I really miss doing things that used to be mundane. And it's even more frustrating because people choose to do it anyways. And I'm here studying medicine because I want to help people and they don't want to help me. And fuck, man. This is why I care so much about a big dope like Kazuma Kuwabara. Because he is compassionate. He's empathetic and he wears his empathy like a badge of honor. We all really could use someone like him right now. Unfortunately for our hero, he's being followed by the antagonist Shinobu Sensui's little protege Kiyoshi Matari. Matari is this little bullied kid who had recently been black-pilled into submission by other kids in Sensui, and this has led him to wanting to inflict his suffering onto others. If you remember, Kuwabara still has no spirit awareness since the Dark Tournament, and as a result, when they are suddenly ambushed by Matari, he has no way of anticipating or defending himself from the attack. Of course, he still uses himself as a shield to protect Kirishima and Okubo when Komada is kidnapped, but Matari is aware that he is essentially powerless against him without his spirit energy being accessible. What I find interesting though is that after threatening him, Matari actually opens up to Kuwabara, tries to express to him why he's behaving this way and why he believes himself to be in the right. Kuwabara doesn't cut him off like Hiei, tell him why he's stupid and wrong like Yusuke, or force him to really think about the hypocrisy like Kurama. He listens to him. He allows Matari to air out his wounds and then allows him to have the fight he seemingly wants. Leave my friends alone and we can fight if you want. He knows Matari is suffering and his compassionate side is searching for a way to help him, but he's just not sure how to yet, so he's going to face him until he figures out how. Of course, Okubo and Kirishima are idiots and immediately ruin this by springing into action and getting captured, which also earns Okubo this lovely little stab in the thigh from Matari, before the three of them are forced into the water demon known as Matari's territory, where they are doomed to drown. It's another dimension as an added bonus, so either Kazuma does the impossible and cuts them out with spirit energy he just does not have right now, or the three drown. Attempting to punch them free fails, and he's quickly absorbed by the water being as well, so it looks like the four of them will drown together. Matari gloats, but he has no idea what he's just unleashed because the constant determination that has kept Kuwa alive this long, plus the possibility of his friends drowning to begin with, fill his body with a sleeping power he did not know he had prior to this point. Enter the Dimensional Sword, honestly one of the most OP concepts introduced to Yu Yu Hakusho as a whole, since it gives the user, well, the power to cut straight through dimensions. Not only does Kuwabara cut straight through the water demon, but he leaves a pretty nasty slash on Matari and wins the fight as a result. Our black-pilled baby boy expects to be killed, but even though Kuwabara tells him that he should kill him, that Matari's actions have more than earned an early grave, he can't kill him. Matari is shocked and confused, but despite being beaten and exhausted himself, Kuwabara proceeds to carry his three unconscious friends and Matari through the streets in the pouring rain and back to the apartment where Team Urameshi is staying for the time being. The only answer he has for Seaman is that even though they might not like it, the honorable thing for men to do is what's right. Killing Matari, although he's already justified it in his head, goes against his code, and therefore he's going to save and help Matari get back on the right path. Matari might not understand it and spends the next few episodes sobbing constantly, trying to come to terms with his black pill beliefs all being wrong, but without the compassion of Kuwabara, he'd have been left to bleed to death in the rain. Matari is only here because Kuwabara saw him, heard him, and against his better judgment understood the potentially good person Matari could be with the right help. So Kuwabara adopts a son, his friends are fine. Am I forgetting something? Oh, right, the Dimensional Sword. Yeah, that's a pretty cool party trick, but funny thing about that, since we need that thing in order to cut through the only thing keeping the toughest demons on either side of the demon or human world, Yusuke and his team haven't fully figured out that Kuwabara is the golden goose though, and because of this, during a skirmish with Sensui and Sniper, Kuwabara is kidnapped by Game Master and Gourmet and taken to their secret tunnel. Their plan? Having Gourmet eat him, of course. That way they have his power in a willing contributor and bing bang boom, instant tunnel opener. Yusuke tries to chase them down on a bicycle, but Sniper gets in the way, so they succeed in getting Kuwabara to the tunnel and proceed to hold him hostage. He's not reunited with the team for 6 episodes, and by the time he is, it's just to watch Kurama dispose of Elder Toguro in a terrifying way, and then almost immediately being eaten by another dimensional demon with Hiei, Kurama, and Matari, so they can watch Yusuke and Sensui's all-out brawl. This fight is brutal. When watching the show together, one of my friends asked me, why doesn't anybody just attempt to shoot their enemy? And needless to say, when Kazuya actually shot Yusuke in the leg, and later multiple times, he was completely transfixed. We just watched Yusuke cycle through this brutal battle for 4 episodes before he comes to a conclusion that we might recognize. Time to die for the homies. Just like the mere suggestion of Toguro killing Kuwabara was enough to get Yusuke to act irrational and begin pleading, Kuwabara repeats this behavior as he comes to the realization that Yusuke is going to die on the assumption that his team will become stronger as a result of his sacrifice. He becomes hysterical, and his spirit awareness and ability begin to overwhelm his body, allowing him to bring out the dimensional sword in a last-ditch effort to get to Yusuke before Sensui kills him. Kuwabara cuts through Itsuki's dimensional monster. He and the 2 demons leap out ready for a fight, but just as he frees himself, Sensui is charging Yusuke. The spirit detective, Kuwabara's best friend, looks him in the eyes and smiles faintly. Sensui makes contact, and Yusuke goes flying.
Come on, stop clowning around. Prankster, I get it. It's paybacks for me tricking you with Toguro. Good one. Too bad I'm not as gullible as you, big lame-o. I mean, just cover up your mouth and nose. You can't complain, right? I mean, dead guys don't gotta breathe. Look, your plan to motivate us worked. I broke us out. Now let's beat Sensui together and go home. Come on, I'm not dumb. See? You can't hide your heartbeat. Meshi.
Sensui just took everything from him. Kuwabara is distraught and irrational, and the demons are picking up on it, equally crazed with emotions. This is just what both Yusuke and Sensui banked on, because while it gives the trio much needed power up through grief, it also throws out the original objective of, not opening the Kakai barrier. They chase him into the tunnel to Demon World, and despite the fact that Kuwabara and Sensui can cross with no consequences since neither is human, Kuwa decides to cut through it because he knows Hiei and Yoko are so hopped up on this need to fight and get revenge that they need to go with him. Yusuke is dead. Hiei and Yoko need him to cut through the tunnel so that they can go with him, and he just wants to get revenge for his fallen best friend. Nothing else matters. They need to kill Sensui no matter what. In a strange way, Kuwabara almost becomes the glue holding this team together, since he's acutely aware of Hiei and Yoko's behavior and actions while they're mostly just focused on trying to land a hit. I don't really have much to say about this fight, but I do appreciate Kuwabara being the person holding this disjointed mess together. Well, until Yusuke comes back, that is. And although Kuwabara struggles to fully accept and understand that Yusuke is actually a demon, he's still raring to go and ready for Sensui round 2. This fight actually amounts to Yusuke and Sensui duking it out, and our newly revived hero losing until his body is borrowed by a distant relative and used to dispose of Sensui. While Yusuke is distraught about the whole thing, Kuwabara acts as a voice of reason and helps convince Yusuke to settle down and return to the human world. This is where a rift between the two is created, because for the first time in the series, Kuwabara and Yusuke are on 2 completely different planes of existence. They were always never matched in strength. Yusuke has always been stronger, and Kuwabara, although pretending he doesn't know it, understands that Yusuke will likely always be stronger. But they were always working towards similar goals. Kuwabara knew Yusuke was lonely and met him on his level so that he could have friends. They worked on cases together, and they fought bad guys together. They learned how to best communicate with each other and did their best to help the other understand them. But all of a sudden, Yusuke is hollow. He's this demon creature, and he's not happy with mundane human life, and Kuwa just can't understand this. Kuwabara is studying for high school entrance exams, trying his best to properly grow up, but Yusuke just can't do this. He can't let go, and all of a sudden he's leaving for Demon World, and this time Kazuma just can't understand him. When they usually fight, it's playful, and there's this understanding that they're going to make up quickly after, but this time Kuwabara is genuinely angry and frustrated, and Yusuke just can't explain himself. Kuwabara is trying desperately to reach him, straight up feeding Yusuke his worries, like him never being happy in both demon and human world, or him turning into an S-class demon that will one day attack them, but Yusuke just can't give him an answer. His "I don't know" has pushed Kuwabara over the edge, and he punches him out of frustration. This punch is what finally snaps Yusuke out of it, finally communicates this "I'm hurt and confused and you need to meet me on my level" message to our protagonist, enough for him to finally appeal to Kuwabara's compassion. He doesn't know himself and can't feel whole until he does, and if you're his friend, Kazuma, you'll support him in this endeavor. But he can't. This is ludicrous. Yusuke is leaving for Demon World and even getting a personal escort via the SDF. That can't be happening. But it is, and before he knows it, Hiei and Kurama have shown up and admit that they're also going to Demon World, although in two different directions. All three are visiting an opposing king and could become enemies, something that causes this reaction in the most empathetic member of the team.
I don't believe what I'm hearing! Have you all gone totally bonkers? I thought we had a good thing going! I thought we had a team! We were gonna fight the good fight together, but it turns out you'll fight any fight, even if it's fighting against each other! I considered you my friends, but you're no friends of mine!
He's talked down by Genkai, but this desperation for his friends to explain themselves, to promise him that they're going to fight for the right reasons, is so raw. He wants their reassurance. He wants them to remain the people he's known, loved, and trusted, and when this is threatened, he's absolutely distraught. The only thing that holds him together as Yusuke leaves is the exchanging of promises. Yusuke wants Kuwabara to study hard, get into a good high school, and then go to college, and Kuwabara wants Yusuke to return as the king of the demons. He doesn't want his best friend to leave, but that one tether of a promise is enough to satisfy them both emotionally, and allow them to leave one another for a whole 3 years, to grow into the adults that they were meant to be. The next time we see Kuwabara is in the last episode, so 13 episodes later. But during the 3-year time skip between then, we know that he's at least kept somewhat in the loop through Kurama, who is just playing identity gymnastics at this point. Kuwabara got into high school and is studying for college entrance exams, and judging by the way 2 girls approach him and Kurama at the train station with no hesitation, he's grown more self-confident and branched out in terms of friends. His heart still belongs to Yukina, and he still has a bit of a temper, but overall, Kuwabara has matured and grown into a well-rounded individual that will no doubt go on to do great things. I really didn't think how much that would get to me at the end of the day. How much just seeing him happy at the end as this realized individual hits me, because just seeing that he's okay and happy is enough for me. I want nothing more to know that my boys are okay, and when I look at Kurama and know that he has such a long way to go before he's completely happy and secure in himself, I can look at Kuwabara and know that he's okay, that he knows himself and he's happy with who he is. He's gonna go to college, maybe settle down in Genkai's house with Yukina and have a pair of twin girls with her. He'll have a job he's passionate about and be very extra at and just be happy. Really, there's nothing more you could want, and I think why this means so much to me, at least right now, is because it's honestly my wish for the year. To be happy. I don't know the last time I was purely happy. I've tried to be, but there's just so much that can break me down and take that from me, and seeing this dopey oaf of a man turn out to be happy and confident just reminds me that even if nobody takes you completely serious, even if everybody doubts you, there's a place and a purpose for you. There's just so much you have to offer the world, and your happy ending is just as deserved as people who seemingly shine brighter than you. A mulberry is a tree. Kuwabara is a man. And he's one of the most memorable characters because he goes to show that creativity and compassion are just as powerful as raw strength, and if you're willing to work hard for it, you'll get the happy ending that you more than deserve. I think with the year that we just finished and the one ahead of us, we could all benefit from trying to be a little more like Kazuma Kuwabara.